All right, well, thanks again, Riley. Appreciate it very, very much. I couldn't do these webinars without you. Everybody, thank you for attending this morning. cnMatrix is our portfolio of Ethernet switches here at Cambium. We've been shipping, I don't know, a little over 2 years now. So we have some big things to talk about today. 2020 was a busy year for us. We had a lot of new products, a lot of new functionality. I'm going to review that with you. 2021 is even more of an exciting year, and I'll talk about that as well. I am going to collapse this, and let's take it away. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? So first of all, cnMatrix. cnMatrix is the brand of our Ethernet switching portfolio. And why would you, as a distie or a partner or a customer, an end customer, why would you choose cnMatrix? It's a very mature industry out there, lots of switches out there. I come from Nortel Networks, Avaya Networks. I've been building switches for a long time, 20-something years. So there's a lot of places to get switches out there. Every switch from every vendor is slightly different, but it's a pretty mature industry. We do have a couple features here at Cambium that I honestly believe, as a switch developer, that is unique and differentiating in the industry. Very, very differentiating. So I'm excited to talk to you about them. Number two, maybe a review for some of you, maybe not. I am going to do an overview of our portfolio. So I'll talk about what we were switching before, and I'll talk about what switches we're going to have in the near future. I'm going to specifically talk about the 2020 highlights and new platforms that we came out in 2020. And I'm mostly today going to talk about our new switching platforms, or the platforms we've been shipping. I will talk about software features a little bit here and there, but mainly on our hardware platform. So then the third item for today is to talk about a new portfolio of switches. This is a new family of Ethernet switches, and this is the EX2016M-P switch that's designed, purpose-built for the WISP and tower application. Within the EX2016M switches, I'll talk a lot. This is what's coming out new very, very, very soon. It will be out. We'll talk about more about that later. Program overview, positioning capabilities, and so on. Now, with these switches, especially the EX2016M switches, there are some accessories that you need to buy. Very important. So I'll review those. Not a lot, but a couple key ones. And then my favorite part of the day is to do a live demo for you guys. So I'm going to pull up cnMaestro, which is our cloud-based management platform, and I'm going to manage a few different groups of switches that I have in my network. I have a network here at home, of course. I'm working from home, and then I also have a network at the office. But anyway, I want to give you a live demo of how easy it is to add new switches to your stack. Completely defaulted new switches, so you just add the switch to the stack, and from a zero touch point of view, that new switch will adopt the configuration of whatever switch group you make it a member of. And then the second half of the demo is, you know, how easy is it to add, move, and change devices as you build out your network. That is also 100% zero touch. So I'm going to demo that to you as well. Okay. I spent my whole time on the agenda here. I better get going. Okay, next slide. Why cnMatrix? Okay, I shoved it all into one slide so we can get it over with. But you know, at Cambium, we have a very comprehensive solution. You don't need to buy products from multiple vendors. You know, multiple vendors, each vendor will have their own pros and cons, so it might seem nice, but if you can buy the complete solution from one vendor, wow, it's one phone number to call if you have questions, one phone number to call if you have problems. It's nice to be able to buy all your equipment from one vendor. So for the access layer of your network, or the edge of your network, you can get everything from Cambium, right? Not only the radios, not only the Wi-Fi access points. Now you can get your wired solution from Cambium as well. And what comes with all of this is our management platform, cnMaestro or XMS, that can manage everything all together. So it's a really great combination. It's a really great solution for the end customer. So once you have your network devices and you're rolling things out, or maybe it's already rolled out, you want to add new devices and manage devices, how do you simplify those operations? Well, that's one thing that we spend a lot of time on, engineering features and making sure it is easy to operate. A couple features that pop out, I'm going to talk about them later. Policy-based automation is one of the key features that we use to automate a lot of the configuration that's needed on these switches, completely automated, and it's based on these policy-based automation. So it really does simplify your operation. At the same time, it improves security. So auto segmentation, so device profiling and policy enforcement of devices that are plugged in the network. So everything I just said is automated. Auto device profiling, auto segmentation, auto enforcing the policies that are. Now, network resiliency, you want your network up and you want it to stay up. Well, because of all the automation we have, we reduce the amount of manual configuration that we have to do. Almost wipe that out completely. And anyway, it reduces the time that you have to spend with the manual configuration, and it reduces manual configuration with the result of it being error prone, right? The less manual configuration you do, the less chance for it. So about management, I mentioned it a couple times before, but a true cloud-based network management system. I've worked at a few companies in the past, and 10, 20 years ago, they had top-notch tier 1 network management solution. And what did they do? They took that network management solution, which was very successful for them, and they converted it to be cloud-based. It's kind of like putting a square peg in a round hole. You really can't just take what you already have and convert it. Anyway, what we did at Cambium, team at Cambium that did this is top-notch. I know the leader of the team, he did an excellent job. But anyway, cnMaestro was architected from the ground up. It works very well, very seamlessly. And I'm going to show you a demo. So everything I'm talking about here doesn't mean you have to pay a lot of money, right? So you get everything that I've talked about. Total cost of ownership is very low. What kind of licensing do you need to pay for? What kind of subscriptions do you need to pay for? Well, from a cnMatrix point of view, zero. The features I tell you about today, there's no licenses required. In fact, the enterprise switches come with a 5-year warranty, and that doesn't cost anything extra either. So one low price, base price of the switch, and you get all the features. Along with that, you get cnMaestro. You get the limited lifetime warranty. So it's a great overall package, very low total cost. I have a small little quote here at the bottom. Excellent performance. cnMatrix is easy to deploy and manage. The performance is exceptional compared to other brands which we used. Our user productivity has increased 10% after deploying cnMatrix and cnPilot. Okay, long slide, let me continue. Policy-based automation, here it is. So we're still talking about why cnMatrix. This is my last slide in that section, policy-based automation. I have entire slide decks dedicated to policy-based automation. Go on site and I can do a 4-hour session just on PDA. I'm going to do just one slide here today, but there is a lot to policy-based automation. It really does differentiate switching from the switching the rest of the industry. Okay, let's start with secure. So when you connect a device to our switch, our device goes into overload. It's busy. It automatically will reach out to that device, and in every way possible, we use a few different mechanisms, but in every way possible, we gather information about that, excuse me, about that device. Now, that information that we gather, we then use that information to figure out if there's a policy that's been developed. So if there's a policy that's been developed for that device, we can then enforce that policy. So again, everything happens automatically so far. We automatically gather the information, we automatically enforce the policy, and the policy can do all kinds of things. I'll talk to you more about that later. And one of the things it can do is to assign that port to its own subnet or VLAN. right? So we can configure a VLAN on the switch. We can make that port a member of the VLAN. So auto segmentation. Now, all this configuration I'm talking about, how we automatically create it, is great, right? Auto configuration does it for you. But what happens when you remove that device from the port? Well, what we do is we auto clean up that configuration. We do not leave that configuration dangling. So this auto cleanup is maybe more important than the configuration itself. It's very important to keep your configuration maintainable, easy to read, but more importantly, it's important to keep your product secure. So you don't leave any critical VLANs open on that port for the next device that gets plugged in. You unplug your device, PVA automatically wipes out the configuration. So a very cool. Okay, simplicity. Now, simplicity is the real reason for PVA. So zero touch, zero touch, zero touch. You ask 10 people what zero touch means, you'll get 10 different answers. For us, it means zero touch for the initial deployment. Great, and that's what everyone tries to accomplish. You plug in your switch, you don't have to pre-stage it or pre-configure it. You plug it in, it automatically will find cnMaestro, and it will do its onboarding process with cnMaestro. I'll demo that today. After it gets its initial configuration, great, it's up and running. But what about adds, moves, and changes? Well, that too. So if you add an access point to that switch, any port you want, or if you have 10 switches in your network, you can add that access port to any port of any switch you want. Or if you have a video surveillance camera, add it in to any port, any switch you want, or any number of 1,000 other devices you can have policies for. So when you plug in that device, the device needs configuration in your switch. You got to configure VLANs, your QoS settings, your security settings, silly things like what is the name of the port. We have a way to automate all that stuff. So you plug a device in, you're finished. You just walk away. And I will demo that. All ports are created equal. So I kind of said this, right? So you don't have to reserve ports 1 through 4 for video surveillance cameras, or ports 5 through 8 for whatever, access points. Every port is equal. You plug that device into any port of any switch you want. Okay, next. Total cost of ownership. So I touched on this, but elimination of error-prone and time-consuming manual configuration. That one bullet right there is a big one. There's a stat out there, I'm not sure if I believe it, but I'll say it. There's a stat out there that says 80% of your network problems are due to misconfiguration. So anyway, so PVA eliminates that manual configuration. So it's a big win for me. So when it comes time to adding a device into your network or moving a device, you don't really need a trained IT staff member to do it. So you need little or no IT required for these adds, moves, and changes. Now, IT, they're needed for a lot of things, right? They're really, really busy. They are, whether you realize it or not, man, be nice to these guys. They're so busy. This is one less thing they have to worry about. So overall, my final statement, it reduces time, energy, and costs required for your network management. All right, switching gears here. Let's talk about the cnMatrix portfolio. I'm going to give you a quick portfolio overview of what we have in our Ethernet switching. Okay, so first of all, we didn't build just one switch for everything. We're building different families of switches that are purpose-built for that deployment scenario. So we have our enterprise switches, and these are the switches that we started shipping back in 2018. And we have all the typical models. We have 8-port models, 24-port models, 48-port models. We have PoE versions of each of those, switches that are PoE capable, switches without PoE. The PoE capable switches, we sell about 8 of those for every 2 of the non-PoE. The PoE switches are very popular. Now these ports, these uplink ports, all these switches have fiber uplink ports. All the switches have SFP plus or 10 gig fiber uplinks. Our smaller 8-port switches have 1 gig or SFP fiber uplinks. Every one of these boxes has a USB port on it for transferring files. It also has your typical RJ45 console port. And this is kind of special. Every one of these switches has an out-of-band network management port. So that means your entire network can go down. But if you have a connection into this port, you can still manage your switch, even if your network has gone down for whatever. That's a really cool feature. You know, half or maybe less than half of our customers take advantage of it, but it's a nice safety valve. Okay, the WISP and tower switches. This is a big one. We'll spend a lot of time on this one today. This is a new switch family. It's not the same. So on the left, I just reviewed with you. Those are the EX2K and the EX1K switches. The new switches here on the right, I say coming soon, but if you talk to me in a couple of weeks, it will say available now. So it's coming very soon. But anyway, these switches are going to be branded as the TX2K switches. Anyway, we're going to have an 8-port, 16-port, and 24-port model. They're going to be based on removable power supplies. We will support Cambium sync. So if you are in the WISP industry, you know what I'm talking about. You need to send this synchronization signal to these radios, and you don't need a special device to do it. These switches can do it. We support all kinds of PoE on these switches, not only the active standards-based PoE, which you get on the enterprise switches, but we also support several variations of passive PoE. These WISP or tower switches are also hardened from a temperature range. Okay, real quick, what kind of software functionality can you expect on these switches? Well, first of all, let me say these are enterprise-grade switches, not your retail switches that you buy at your local electronics store. You can put these in your top-tier enterprise networks and feel very safe and secure. They're fully featured, layer 2, layer 3, extensive ACLs, filtering and FOSS capabilities, long list of security features. Fully managed, you can have unmanaged products, you can have smart managed products, but what you want for your enterprise robust network is a full solution. And all that means is that these switches do support a very comprehensive CLI. We also support a very nice user-friendly web GUI, but they also support what I've already been talking about, a cloud-based network management solution. So yes, we have a network management solution, and it's called cnMaestro. Now, cnMaestro, I won't go into details of this, but it can run in the cloud or on-premise. So if the customer isn't comfortable with the cloud, he can still run it on-premise. Uplinks. I've already told you about this, 10 gig uplinks. It's important to pay attention to this. A lot of the switches you look at out there are 1 gig. If you have a 24-port switch, 24 1 gig ports, and you have 1 gig uplinks, you're going to have your uplink pipe is going to be overloaded. So anyway, 10 gig uplinks is important. Intelligent PoE. So yes, we support PoE, and I think every vendor out there supports PoE. We put a lot of time and energy into our PoE. We provide stats, health stats on a per port basis. We can tell you how much power an individual port is pulling at any instant in time. We can tell you how much power the entire switch is pulling at any instant in time. We graph all of those things for you in cnMaestro. You have complete control of the PoE on a per port basis. You can enable it or you can disable it on a per port. Also, what's really cool is we have a toggle button. So if you want to give a device a wake-up call, it's not performing to your expectations, you think something's wrong with it, you can hit this toggle button and it will automatically disable the power on that port, and a couple seconds later it will re-enable the power. It's a nice maintenance type feature. Advanced features, I've kind of been mentioning them already, but I would say this is an L3 capable switch. A lot of switches you buy out there might be L2 only. They might be L2 and L3, but the L3 will be routing only. And then a lot of switches out there will have L2 and L3, and they will support some type of dynamic routing. And that's the path we've chosen here. We support a full suite of L2 features and we support dynamic routing from an L3 point of view. Also, an advanced feature that I've already talked about, and I need to resist talking about it more, but policy-based automation. That will be a big part of our demo later. And then tying it all together, a true zero-touch experience, and this is also going to be my demo for later today, so I won't talk much about it, but I am going to demo to you when you're installing a new factory defaulted switch, how easy it is. And then I'm going to show how easy it is to plug new devices into your switch. And each of those devices needs certain types of configuration, but I'm going to do it in a way that it's zero touch, 100% zero. So all these features, you get it all for a low, all-inclusive price, limited lifetime warranty of 5 years, and you get Cambium support, which has a great reputation, very, very good. So best in class TCO. Okay, quick overview of the timelines. How has all this happened? So I joined Cambium Networks 3.5 years ago. It feels like only 6 months. The time's come by so fast. But anyway, 3.5 years ago. So we started shipping our first 4 switches a little over 2 years ago. And these were our 8-port and 24-port PUE and non-PUE switches. Last year was a big, big year for us. So early last year, we started shipping 4 new models, 3 48-port versions, and 1 multi-gig switch. And I'll talk about all those switches later. Then in summer of last year, June, we released our first EX1K. So all the switches on the left are EX2K switches. Now we're coming out with another series called the EX1K. So we came out with the 24-port switches in June, and then the 8-port switches in August. And that is our complete lineup, 12 switches for the enterprise space. You might be wondering what's the difference between a 2K switch and a 1K switch. The answer is features and cost, and I'm going to go through that with you in a few slides. Okay, now what's new? What's coming out new? What's coming soon? We have 3 TX2K switches coming out that is targeted at the WISP power deployment. And I will spend lots of time today talking about that. Okay, let's talk about these enterprise switches first and what happened in 2020. So first of all, the 3 48-port models. Okay, highlighted in red there is our first model, and that is a non-PUE switch. You get 48 ports and 4 10-gig uplinks. Big picture of it here down at the bottom, and that's your typical generic 48-port non-PUE switch. The second switch highlighted in red is the same thing, except it does support PUE. It has an internal power supply, and it has a PUE power budget of 400 watts. So those 400 watts are shared across all 48 ports. Some ports might be pulling 20 watts. Some ports might be pulling 5 watts. For example, an IP phone pulls like 5 watts. So, an AP, depending on the access point, some pull 10 to 15, some pull 20 to 25, some pull over 30. Very few. Okay, now we have a third version, and that's highlighted in red. That's the 2052R-P. What does that mean? It means that the power supply is not internal, it's not fixed. You can unplug it from the back. Now we built this switch so that customers would have more options as to how much PUE power they want. Now these power supplies, they're designed to be pulled in and out by the customer. There's just a little lever there and it just slides right out. Very, very simple. Now we sell 6 of these power supplies that plug in, 3 AC supplies, and if you're interested, 3 DC supplies. So you have options where you get 400 watts of PUE power, that would be using the fixed power supply, all the way up to 1,000 watts of PUE power. So if you're plugging in some very power hungry devices, then you go for the larger 1,200 watt supply. So this provides for a very flexible environment. If a customer has certain types of devices plugged into a switch, He may need the small CRPS device with 600 watts, 500 watt PoE power. But over time, he starts using devices that need more and more power. Well, he does not have to swap out the switch and learn how to use a new switch. All he has to do is swap out the power supply. So very, very nice design. Okay, now here is our multi-gig switch. Our multi-gig switch is it's like a hybrid. Some of the ports are your standard 1 gig. Some of your access ports are your standard 1 gig access ports. So on the left-hand side, you see an arrow there. There's 8, 10, 100, 1000 megabit per second ports. So those are 1 gig ports. Now in the middle, we have those 6 green ports. Now those ports are using the new 802.3BZ standard. So in this design, they can go up to 2.5 gig. So why would you need over a gig? I mean, nothing actually uses the full gig. So why do you need more than a gig? Well, it's mainly because of the new Wi-Fi access points. So these new Wi-Fi access points, Wi-Fi 6, they can pull more than a gig. So that's why this 802.3BZ standard came about. But not every port on your switch is going to be dedicated to a Wi-Fi access point. So some of your ports are going to be connected up to the printer. Some of your ports might be connected to a cube for a computer or something. Some of the ports will be used for Wi-Fi access points, and that's why we have these here. Now, something special about these 6 ports, it supports 802.3 BT standard, which means we can power up devices up to 60 watts. 99% of all the switches that you see out there today are using 802.3 AFAT, which goes up to 30 watts. So like those orange ports on the left, those 8 ports, they will power devices up to 30 watts, which is fine. 99% of the devices out there are 30 watts or less. The green ports will go up to 60 watts though. Some of those cameras, high-end cameras that have built-in heaters and stuff, they use over 30 watts. There's a lot of examples of devices that might use 30 watts. So anyway, that's just kind of icing on the cake for this switch. Now we also have the fiber uplink ports. We have 2 10 gig fiber uplink. Okay, next slide. Okay, a little bit about how do you go after this enterprise access space. So at the edge of your network, you have a bunch of switches. That's the edge of your network, or we call it the access layer of your network. That space is an $8 billion market space. Everyone is selling switches in that space, and you usually don't build just one switch in that space. So what does Cambium do? Well, we're going to build 3 switches. We have the cnMatrix in the middle there, which I think is the sweet spot. We have the cnMatrix 2K. I talked to you about that. We have 8-port, 24-port, and 38-port switches. But also, and then up to the right, we have the cnMatrix 3K. That's a future program that is not out yet. And then move down to the left, we have the cnMatrix 1K. So we have the 2K series and the 1K series. Both of those are shipping today. I showed you that. And here's a slide. Oh, real quick. So I recommend meeting with the EX2K. It really is the sweet spot. But we have aggressively priced the cnMatrix 1K. So if you look at the MSRP, the list price, our cnMatrix 1K, if you look at the cnMatrix 1K, like if you look at the 8-port PoE switch, and you compare it to the EX2K 8-port PoE switch, the MSRP would be roughly half. And here is a chart that kind of describes the differences. So if you look at the white box here on the far right, that summarizes the differences between the 1K and the 2K. So the 1K, we do strip away the dynamic routing. So on the 1K, we do support static routes, but not dynamic. On the 1K, the power budget is less. That fixed internal power supply on the 24-port switch is 400 watts on the 2K. But on the comparable switch of the 1K, the 24-port 1K, that has 200 watts. And those, and the out-of-band network management port, that I talked to you about that. That's on the EX2K, and the EX1K. Now, for the 8-port switches, I'm not going to go into the details, but same thing. You lose the dynamic routing. you lose the out-of-band management port, and you get slightly less PUE power, which might be fine for some of the customers. Might be more than that. Okay, I'm switching gears now. So I'm no longer talking about the enterprise switches. I'm going to start talking about our new tower switches that start shipping very, very, very soon. So this is kind of a summary. These TX2K tower switches, what is it? It's a new family of switches purpose-built for WISP tower deployments. It's a fully integrated solution. So I'll say those three words again, fully integrated solution. And this is where we are so much different. You buy this one box and you can throw away 5 or 10 boxes that you already have. We've integrated everything into one, and I'll talk to you more about that. So in this fully integrated solution, you get switching. It's a full-blown L2, L3 switch. It's a full-blown enterprise-grade, non-blocking L2, L3 switch. PUE, great, you get PUE, but it's more than just that. It's not just the standards-based active PUE. You also get 24-volt passive PUE. You also get high-power 54-volt passive PUE that can go up to 90 watts. Even with the standards-based PUE, 802.3 BT, we can go up to 90 watts with that as well. So in these WISP deployments, you have some radios that are very power hungry. The PMP 450M 5 gigahertz version from Cambium requires 90 watts. And you can power not just one, but many of those into this switch. Now the switch that I have pictured on the bottom here, that is our 2020R-P switch. So 20 ports. So it has 16 access ports and 4 output ports. So that's the picture I've put up. Anyway, back to the fully integrated solution. So switching, yes. PUE, yes. And then Cambium sync. A lot of these radios need Cambium sync. So we support Cambium sync on every one of our RJ45 DACs. So on this picture below, 16 ports, you get Cambium sync on every one of those 16 ports. Now the input source for this GPS signal can come from 2 places. So I'll talk more about that later, but dual redundant GPS synchronization sources. Management, I have to talk about management. So fully manageable. So cnMaestro cloud-based network management system. So this switch supports all of the management interfaces of our enterprise switches. So a very comprehensive COI. COI lets you touch every little feature and every little sub-feature that we have. We have a very nice web GUI, but we also have cnMaestro, and it's fully functional on this first day of shipping. You can do onboarding and registration, you can do monitoring, you can do configuration, you can do troubleshooting, and so on. And anyway, so complete solution. Another thing to mention is the power supplies on these TX switches. There's no internal power supplies. There's a removable and redundant power supplies on this 16-port switch below. So you can see the 2 power supplies. This switch does not need 2 power supplies. 100% functional with just 1 power supply. The second power supply is there only for redundancy. A very nice feature, which I'm finding everybody wants this version. I'm not too surprised. So this last bullet is super important. So this is a brand new product that we're shipping, and I'll reveal the date in a bit. It's a couple weeks away. We're going to be shipping, and this is a new product, but the software is not new, right? People get nervous about buying a new product with 1.0 software. This software is the exact same software that we run on our enterprise switches. So this software is 3 years old, just like it is on enterprise switches. And the one software image, the binary image, you download that same binary image on either our enterprise switches or our WISP switches. So that's big. It's very, very important. It's a big help for the R&D engineering team. It's also a big help for us. Okay. digging a little deeper. So let's talk about the functionality of this switch. Now, I have different webinars, and this one page is a webinar all in itself, but I'm gonna give you the full functionality on this one. So standard console port and USB port. Then we have the first 8 banks of ports, and these 8 banks of ports is one of 2 banks, right? We've got the green ports and the pink ports. Now on this first bank, all 8 ports are 10, 100, 1000 megabit per second ports. So they're 1 gig. On these 8 ports, you get Cambium sync out ports. From a PoE point of view, we have implemented these ports with 4 pair PoE. That is what enables us to go up to 90 watts. So 802.3 ATBT supports any power draw from 0 up to 90 watts. But we also have passive 54 volts, which can go up to 90 watts as well. So depending on the radio that you're plugging in, if that radio can be powered via PoE, we can power it, no problem. If that radio requires 802.3, we got it. If the radio requires some type of passive PoE, we got it. Okay, let's talk about the next 8 ports. The next 8 ports are very, very similar. 1 gig ports. The Cambium sync, yes. The PoE is 2 pair PoE, which is, if you look at all the PoE switches today, 99% of them are 2 pair PoE. That enables you to go up to 30 watts of power. So that's, and 30 watts is fine. 99% of the devices you plug in, 30 watts is enough. But anyway, so these 8 ports are 2 pair PoE, gives you 802.3 up to 30 watts. We also have passive 54 volts up to 30 watts. And then we also have something unique on these 8 ports. So we also support low voltage passive PoE on these 8 ports. And so that's 24 volts, but there's a range. For example, the Cambium low voltage devices go to 30 volts. So we support them too. Anyway, and we support up to 15 watts on those, which is plenty for these low voltage devices. Okay, what's next? These are 4 uplink ports, 10 gig fiber uplink ports, SFP plus ports. What's next? Okay, so this is a big one. This is where we get, this is the input for the GPS signal, or the GPS source. So if you look at the top gold connector, that's where you will screw in this external antenna. So the antenna can be put in a strategic location to get a good signal of the GPS satellites. And with that antenna, it gets the satellite signal. And we have the GPS module in our switch that can decode that signal and get the 1 pulse per second that we need, as well as all the information about that satellite. Or right below the gold connector is the RJ45 jack, which is powered, and that is for a cnPulse device. That cnPulse device also gives us the GPS source, but it internally has its own GPS module. But anyway, you as a customer have your choice. Use one or the other, or you can use both. If you use both, then if one fails for whatever reason, you have the other as a backup. So it's a redundancy built in. So next is the ground terminal. This grounded terminal, what's unique about this? That's located on the front of the panel. Everything here is on the front panel of the switch. If you turn the switch around and look at the back, I should add that to the slide. Anyway, if you look at the back, there's nothing there. There's nothing but sheet metal on the back. And this was a big request from our customers. They wanted everything accessible on the front panel. And then here we have the 2 dual power supplies, removable, redundant. I said it before, I need to stress this though. Only 1 power supply is required. If you use 1 power supply, you get 100% of your functionality. You don't lose anything. But if you use 2, you get redundant. So you can use 2 600 watt supplies, or you can use 1 600 watt supply and 1 930 watt supply. You can do it any way you want. Okay, next slide. So I've talked a lot about this, but what can you actually connect to this switch? Let's remember this is an L2, L3 switch. You can plug anything, any Ethernet device into these ports, anything. even if it does not require PUE. Well, we talk about PUE a lot, but it doesn't have to be a PUE device. If it gets its power from somewhere else, fine. You can still plug it into the switch. Now, when it comes to PUE, I already told you all the modes we support. Any device that can be powered up via PUE, we can power it up. So, does the device require 802.3? Yes, we got it. Does it need up to 90 watts? Yes, we got it. Does the device need to be powered up via 24 volt low voltage passive PUE? If it does, we have it. If it needs 54 volt passive PUE, up to 90 watts, yes, we have it. Okay, if the device needs Cambium sync, yes, we have it. The supported Cambium devices. So I get emails every day. John, we'll support this radio. John, we'll support this radio. We're going to come out with a connectivity guide that lists all the Cambium radios and if these new cnMatrix TX2K switches will support them. And I'll tell you right now, the answer is yes to everyone. Some of them need to be left in the 802.3 mode, which is the default mode. Some of them you need to change the mode to either 54 volt passive or 24 volt. And moving that, in some cases, we can automate that. In some cases, we need to do that. So a real quick example. If you take this 16 port switch here, now I keep talking about the 16 port switch because that's the switch that is going to be delivered first. And I'll show you that in the roadmap. So on this 16 port switch, on these 8 green ports that can go up to 90 watts, you can plug in 8 450M radios simultaneously, 8. Now, I don't know of any deployments out there that use 8 radios on a single tower, 8 450Ms on a single tower. But if you did, you could do it with one switch. You don't need any extra power injectors. You don't need any extra, GPS sync devices. This one switch does it all. Now, what about the remaining 8 ports? You can plug anything in there you want. In my example here, I have 8 450i radios. So at peak, now these radios don't operate at peak power all the time, but if they were at peak, it's 8 times 90 is 720, then 8 times 30 is 240. You add that up, 960 watts. And this switch absolutely can put out 960 watts, no problem. You can either have 2 600s or 2 930s, or you can have a single 1200 or any way you want. And remember, this is peak. You'll never see it pulling 960 watts. Those like the 450i rated at 30 watts, it never will at a sustained rate pull 30 watts. So again, all 16 ports can be synced. And again, on top of everything I just mentioned, it's a full-blown L2, L3 switch. Hey, what is the roadmap? So we just released a software image 3.2.2, unrelated to what we're talking about here today. It's just we're constantly updating our software image and posting it. Before this, we had 3.2.1, and why did we post this image? A couple enhancements, a couple customer issues that were addressed, and anyway, that's our latest image. So what's coming next is 4.0, which is the 16-port switch. So 4.0 does a lot of things, hardware and software. It supports the 16-port switch, but we also have a whole bunch of software features in there. And those software features apply to all of cnMatrix, EX enterprise switches, and the new tower switches. For example, I listed here cable diagnostics. That's not just for tower switches, that's for all. So again, one software image for all cnMatrix. Okay, 4.0.1. This supports the new 8-port switch. To be honest, the 4.0 image already supports the 8-port image, but anyway, we have 4.0.1 coming out with a handful of new software features. And then we have 4.1 coming out in June, and that supports the new 24-port version that's coming out. So we got the 16-port will be shipping in volume in just a couple of weeks. The 8-port towards the end of April will be shipping in volume, and then the 24-port, kind of middle of June, will be shipping in volume. And those software images can be loaded onto the enterprise switches or not. All right, a little bit about the competition. So I have 3 rows in this table. The switch can provide passive PoE to the device. The switch can provide 24-volt, low voltage passive PoE, and the switch has Cambium sync. So the switch I talked to you about today, the EX2016M-P that run in the picture, supports all those things. Our competition also supports all those things. The competition does it as a mid-span device, not as a full-blown switch. I won't go into the details of what a mid-span device is, but basically it's a glorified power engine. Okay, but let's go down the list a little bit more. Redundant sources for Cambium sync, I showed that to you. The competition does not. How about standards-based PoE? Standards-based PoEs, it goes through a detection stage. It goes through a classification stage to understand how much water to apply. It's night and day difference between passive PoE. And if your device supports 802.3, you want to use it. No matter what. More and more of these radios do support standards-based PoE. So anyway, that's a big yes there. What's next? Okay, so enterprise-grade L2, L3 switching. That's a big yes. It is a full-blown integrated switch. Competition, no. Fiber uplink ports, yes. Competition. Fully managed, COI, web, cnMaestro. The competition, no, not really. A little bit here and there. So I put minimal, but not really. So, I mean, you look at all this green and you look at the red and you think, geez, this thing's going to be expensive. So you get the all-in-one solution. You also get dual redundant power supplies. You got dual redundant Cambium sync. You got dual redundant supplies. So you have quite a bit of redundancy built in if you choose to use it. And again, lots of green versus lots of red, and the price. This price is based on list price. This is a full solution price. I threw in the switch and a CRPS, which needs to be bought separately. I'm going to emphasize that. On the right side, the competition, I did find one solution that was kind of cheap, low. I wouldn't recommend that solution, but it is lower in price. But even that price is more than ours. More typically, I found prices quite a bit more than ours. Let me give you one example of the competition. So there's a product called the cnM5, and that is a Cambium product. So I'm calling them the competition. It's a mid-span device, just like the other competition I looked at. It supplies power, it supplies Cambium sync, but it doesn't have all these other things, and it's more expensive than this fully integrated switch thing. So that's just one example. There's several other specific companies in this competition call. Okay, moving on. I'd like to kind of pause here for a bit and ask a question. For yourself, maybe you're a managed service provider, or for your customers, what type of management do they prefer? COI, web GUI, or a cloud or on-prem management platform like cnMaestro? Okay, so Riley, over to you for the poll. Okay, I see the votes are coming in already. So exciting. I'm going to get a drink of water. Okay, 30% are in. 43%. Okay, so keep voting. I'll talk a little bit. So 100% of you are preferring cnMaestro. It's good. I would have guessed that the majority, I would not have guessed 100%, but I would have guessed that the majority would have selected cnMaestro. Okay, I think I think everyone that wants to vote has voted. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Riley. Okay, I'm going to move on now. I appreciate that, everybody. Okay, what's next? The accessories. Very important. I'm going to go quick though, okay? I keep talking about these removable power supplies. This is them, 6 of them. And it's important to know that these do not come with the switch. You have to order them as an accessory. So if you buy just the switch, you're not going to be able to power it up. So you have to buy one of these 6 flavors. Again, 3 AC and 3 DC. On our 10 gig uplink ports, SFP and the SFP plus uplink ports, it's required to buy transceiver modules. I have a picture of 3 of them that you plug into these slots. Now you can buy these from any vendor you want. If you do buy them from a vendor, make sure they're a well-trusted, reputable. Cambium sells our own. So from a complete solution point of view, you can get the power supplies, the power cords, and the transceivers from Cambium. We sell 6 different versions, 1 gig, 10 gig, long reach, short reach, and copper transceivers. So any deal you do, you should include these transceivers. Now for the Cambium sync, you have your choice between an antenna. We have a part number here for the antenna, or for Cambium CN Pulse sync generator, same thing. Okay, I have used up my time. I don't think we have time for the demo today. That's unfortunate. The demo is pretty exciting. Let's see. Maybe I'll do something really quick. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's either Q&A or demo. I'll try to do the quick demo real quick. So I'm going to plug some things into my network to save time. Okay, so in the setup I have this is my home network. I have 1 switch in my home network. The demo is to add 2 brand new defaulted switches to that network. So we'd have 3 switches. The static configuration, the configuration that already exists on that 1 switch, includes the following. 3 VLANs are set up, 100, 110, and 120, and 2 PVA policies. So when I add these 2 new switches, from a completely zero touch point of view, I add them into the network. These 2 switches will inherit this configuration. Now, the configuration has 2 PVA policies. I've labeled them, one as a CN Pilot AP policy, and the rules are going to be OLDP based. I'm going to set the PoE port priority from a default value of low to high. I'll set the VLANs to the following, and the user priority bits I'll set to 2. The second policy is a camera. It's set up for a third-party video surveillance camera based on a Mac OUI. That's how we'll detect cameras. And for this, the actions will be, I'm going to set the PoE port priority critical. I'll create some VLANs and make that specific port a member of those VLANs, 7788899, and I'll change the user priority to 3. So all this configuration, I'm not going to touch a thing. It's all going to be zero touch through the PVA policies. So today's demo, add 2 switches to the existing stack and add 1 AP and 1 video pin. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the demo. Okay. If you guys can still see my screen, this is my cnMaestro. John Mead says, John Mead, cnMaestro account. Over here, there's an option. If you can follow my cursor, it says onboard devices. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to the onboard screen. These are some old devices I was playing with earlier. So I'm going to hit the claim device button. I'm going to enter the 2 serial numbers. And maybe I've added 2 serial numbers for the 2 switches I'm adding. You might be adding 10 switches or 100 switches. You just add them into this window, one or more at a time. Claim button. Okay, let's see if it's success or not. And it says success. So I will close this window. So now I have these 2 other switches down below, and they're waiting for the device. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to edit them. And I have a bunch of switch groups in my home. In my account. I have one at the office. I have one at home. I'm going to select the home one. Okay, the model of this switch is 1010. Save that. I'm going to do the same one for the other switch. Set it to home. Save. Okay. Now, one last step. I need to approve these devices. The registration and onboarding process won't complete until I approve it. So I'm going to approve it. Okay, so they're now they're in approval state, so they're waiting for the device. So I just plugged in my switches for this demo, and it will take a few minutes to discover. Yeah, it will take a few minutes to discover. While we're doing that, let me give you a tour of cnMaestro.
Hey, John, I just want to give you a heads up that I do think it will cut us off on the hour.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Riley. So what I was going to show you is I would plug in a device. That device, you'd on the cnMaestro screen, you'd see the device was automatically configured. I was going to remove that device. You'll see that the configuration automatically cleans up. And then I can move that device to another port, and you'll see that the configuration automatically is applied to the new port. It's a pretty cool demo to see the configuration coming and going like that without having to type in a single thing. So that's what I would have showed you. I'm sorry I ran a little bit late. Let's try to sneak in a couple Q&A before we wrap up for today. How does that sound? Okay, one question. If I can get to my window here. Okay, Cambium Sync. Good question. So Cambium Sync is something that our radios use to synchronize with each other. They synchronize when to send, when to transmit, and when to receive. If all the radios at the top of the tower were sending at the same time, that would create a lot of collisions. So if you have a tower with 4 radios, each radio handling a 90-degree sector, if all 4 of those radios were transmitting at the same time, there would be a lot of conflict and collisions. So the radios have their own process of when to send and when to receive, and they synchronize that process with the other radios via the Cambium Sync signal. Rajan, I hope that answers your question. Okay, and that was the only question, Riley, so I think we're good to go.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, John, for sharing that information with us, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar to all attendees shortly, so be on the lookout for that. But until then, enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.